The last week of regular season football is here. And for that means the real NFL playoffs are rapidly approaching, and it means your fantasy playoffs have either just ended or you may have one game left this week, which would be a championship game. So this week's show is going to be a little bit different. I figure 85% of you have probably already either played in the championship or your fantasy football season has ended. For the other 15% who have a game this week, if you're playing in the championship game, just remember everything I've taught you this year so far, and I'm sure you will do just fine. But for those of you who won your championship last week, or maybe placed in the top 2 or 3 and made some money, like the professor, thank you for watching. Obviously, it's paid off. We salute you. If you do have a team playing this weekend in a championship game, the professor does have one tip for you. And that's be careful of the players you have on your team and the teams that they play for if they've already locked up a playoff position or clinched home field advantage throughout the playoffs, or maybe they're just a bad team and really have nothing left to play for, Arizona Cardinals. So be careful who you have on your team and how much playing time they're going to get. Somebody like Aaron Rodgers or maybe Tom Brady, they might not play a whole game. Whereas if you have somebody on your bench like a Tony Romo, you may actually look at starting him in the championship game because he's going to play all 4 quarters. They have something to play for. So that's my tip to you for this week. Obviously, if you've made it this far and you're playing in the championship game, you've paid attention. So you should do well this week. Now, the rest of what we're going to talk about is a few top performers this week as a little recap. So we're going to get into the quarterback position. And, you know, the top 5 quarterbacks ended up being Drew Brees at number 1, 386 points. Tom Brady at 374. And Aaron Rodgers rounds out the top 3 at 371. Pretty close, all the top 3. Then it drops a little bit down to number 4 at Peyton Manning and Matt Ryan, both right around the 348 and 330 mark. And then I would like to point out Robert Griffin III was number 7 and Andrew Luck, number 9. Two rookies. I think that's actually probably one of the first times in fantasy football history that you'd have 2 rookie quarterbacks scoring in the top 10. So if you drafted them, or maybe stole them in the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th round in your draft this past year, or maybe even Andrew Luck a little later, great move. Congratulations to you. Now let's talk about the top 5 running backs this season. Now, number 1 so far, Adrian Peterson at 285 points. Arian Foster, who's expected to be up there at 250. Doug Martin right behind him, 249. Ray Rice, and then Marshawn Lynch rounding out the top 5. Now, out of those running backs, you know, Arian Foster, Ray Rice, even Marshawn Lynch, you know, most people expected them to be up in the top 5, top 10 running backs. Adrian Peterson, a lot of people were scared, and if you took the guts to draft him this past season, it definitely paid off. What a high risk, but what a great reward being the number 1 point scoring running back right now. People probably got Doug Martin in a 6th, 7th, or even later rounds. That was a great pickup as he becomes the 3rd ranked running back this season. And a couple other notables who you could have got and probably came out to help you really big this season would be somebody like C.J. Spiller, who a lot of people got very late in the draft and ended up being, you know, a top 10 running back. And Alfred Morris, because due to injury, as soon as he stepped up, if you picked him up at a free agency, that was a great pickup on a top 10 running back this season. At the wide receiver position, as we look back on this season, Calvin Johnson took number 1 point scoring at 265 points. Brandon Marshall following him very closely by just a few points at number 2. A.J. Green, also a monster, right around 240 points. Des Bryant, what a second half of the season. If you had him on your team in the second half, boy, did you make up ground. And Demaryius Thomas, boy, who had him as a top 5 receiver? I know he would be top 20, but not top 5. Boy, does he like having Peyton Manning as his quarterback. Now, a couple notable receivers. Vincent Jackson, if you picked him up, he became a number 7 receiver overall. And I'm sure you probably picked him up in the 3rd, 4th, or 5th round. Great pickup. Reggie Wayne, if you were probably scared to pick him up at the beginning of the season, but with Andrew Luck's emergence, he scored as a top 10 receiver. And earlier in the season, when Greg Jennings went down with injury, if you were someone who picked up Randall Cobb, I bet that helped your team quite a bit. Good notable receivers that you should have picked up this season. Now at the tight end position, there was quite some shakeup because most people expect Gronkowski and, you know what I mean, people like Jimmy Graham to be, you know, some of these top scorers. Well, you had Gronkowski in the top 5, but he was number 5. Now granted, he was injured, so he probably would have been number 1 if he wasn't hurt half the season. Anyways, Jason Witten at number 4 from the Cowboys. And number 3, Heath Miller, who is also hurt right now, so still ending in the top 3. Jimmy Graham was actually number 2. And the number 1 is the old guy, Tony Gonzalez in the Falcons, 175 points this season. But I'll tell you what, it's the notables at the tight end position that really make something special. Brandon Myers, Owen Daniels, and Kyle Rudolph are all people you probably drafted in the 14th, 15th, 16th round. And they were all top 10 tight ends this season. As the season is now coming to an end, and we look back on our fantasy football season, the most important thing is I hope that you all had fun. And we hope that you enjoyed the Other Fantasy Guys show, and the professor hopes that you enjoyed watching, and hopefully we've helped teach you something and learn something, or at least make you think a little bit outside the box on your fantasy football lineups and gave you some sort of advice. And so we would actually really appreciate it if you would post a comment in the comment box below and let us know, you know, if we helped you out at all, if you enjoyed watching the show, or, you know, even if there's anything that you would like to see next year. Because the professor does have a couple offers from a couple major sports broadcasting companies that would like him to be a fantasy analyst next year. And I do like to have some loyalty to my fans. So if I get enough feedback and enough comments that if people enjoyed the show, then I will turn down these other offers from these big networks, and I will, you know, do the show my own way and give you guys the advice that I like to give. But please post a comment and let us know if you enjoyed the show this season. Make sure you stay tuned in a couple weeks where we will have a special show for you. And as always, make sure you like this video, subscribe to our channel for future updates, and don't forget to follow us on Twitter. Thanks again for watching, and to you, all my fans, we appreciate you.